we went and hired a publicist. We went to go have a meeting with Margie Korshak here in Chicago. It was a huge publicist, still is. You know, I mean, she does work with Paramount Pictures and, you know, Warner Brothers and Sony. She was the biggest publicist in this town. We went and had to show her. She had no clue who we was. She had no clue who BMX was. This is a 70-year-old lady living from the North Shore, had no clue who we were. All right? We had to sit down with her for a week straight and describe what we did, show her numbers, Arbitron ratings, try to give her, and then she asked us, she goes, educate her on what was going on, which was hard for someone that's old school like that had no clue what these new kids were into. She asked us, she flat out told us, what do you think I can do for you guys? And we're like, well, listen, we're not getting props around the country. We're not getting the record deals. We're not getting the remixes. We're stuck in a niche. We're stuck in Chicago. We're like, you know, the old blues guys that would sit around on Wall Street and come up with all the riffs, and then the Rolling Stones would make a hit record out of it. Yeah, guys in New York were starting to steal all the stuff that we were doing. We want to get credit for that. We want to have what we're doing go nationwide, worldwide. She said, well, you know, some outrageous number like $20,000, $30,000 she wanted up front. And we looked at each other and said, no way. It's not going to happen. So when you're saying that, I know what you're saying, well, we didn't get that worldwide globalness. And to this day, even, you know, my wife and family members, even Kenny, you know, last week we were sitting around talking going, wow, Paul Oakenfeld's got a record with Brittany Murphy. That should be us. But you know what? Somebody had to be a moron and do what happened at BMX. It just so happened to be us. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. We're the fifth Beatle, dude, or the sixth Beatle. You know what I mean? Yeah. We're never going to get that props. Really, what should have been and could have been is because somebody else took it to the next level. You know what I mean?
And you know what? And you're right. You're absolutely right. And maybe the other part of that is the fact that we're in Chicago and not New York or L.A. Exactly. In Chicago, all the record companies had left by then. So it's not like we could go downtown Chicago to Mercury Records or something and say, hey, look, you know, let's do this. This is a Chicago thing. Well, there was nobody left.
There was a couple labels in Chicago that turned their back. There was, you know, you had all the representatives out here. You had you had everybody else, and they were still hiring guys from the East Coast and West Coast to do BMX style of mixes on the new songs that were coming out. And our argument was, you're hiring Michael Graber in New York, great guy, but he has no clue what they're doing here in Chicago in the Midwest. You know what I mean? But they just couldn't. We didn't have that.
It's all about relationship.
It's all about that relationship, being in the right place, the right time.
That's right.
And we're, I hate to say it, we're in the Midwest.
Yeah.
You know, Belushi had to leave, Murray had to leave. They all had to go somewhere else.
Yeah, that's true.
You know,
and you know, I've told this story a couple of times too. The guys that didn't make it into the Hot Mix 5, not that they were not good. I just couldn't do more than 5 guys, and 5 was a push. At one time, I said, "Yeah, 2 or 3 guys, and I'm cool." But as I was trying to put it together, I said, "Well, you know, if I only do 3, then this style and this style is not going to be represented." So I ended up with the 5. But guys like Frankie Knuckles, who is world renowned, you know, big in New York, big in London, Germany, and places like that. Well, he didn't make my cut. He didn't bring his tapes in on time. They were bad quality. The beats sounded like a herd of elephants sometimes. They were off beat. So, you know, I don't know if he was at that point maybe just not ready, but he was not consistent. And the guys that made it were consistent. You know, they would bring their tapes in on time. There were times when I had to yell at all of them from time to time to get in on time. But for the most part, you know, it worked out. It worked out.
When you get into the mixes were one thing. Then you had the actual, I mean, then you had the radio station.
Right.
Air personalities, talent. You get in there at WBMX, who's the first person that you let go, and who's the first person you bring in on-air personalities?
Wow. Okay, when I became the PD,
even before you even set up the mix shows and everything, because then eventually Armando.
Right.
But who, when you became
Armando was probably one of my early hires in '81.
Mm-hmm.
He was in El Paso, Texas, and he sent me an audition tape, and I said, yeah, And I recognized at that point too, what I was trying to do was to reflect the metropolitan area, and we didn't have a Hispanic person on the air. And quite honestly, when he got there, he was less Hispanic than what I was really looking for. But he was a good radio technician. He understood the business, and he could do radio real well. So but you know, his biggest problem was he was shy, and he still is.
Yeah.
Still kind of introverted.
Well, you ain't seen him since he's been editing this. You should have seen him swinging from the trees in Costa Rica filming that shit.
Yeah, but see, nobody knew it.
Nobody.
So he could get away with it. See,
there's nobody there.
Right,
except
exactly.
the camera.
So, but you know, I brought him in. I want to say Steve Gunn, I hired. Another guy from Cleveland, Mike Jeffries. We brought in. Now Veronique was already there.
I had a crush on her.
Most people. She was the hottest thing in Chicago.
It was a weird thing.
Midnight.
It was a weird. It was a.
No.
Didn't have his insulin or something, passed out in the studio?
I don't remember that, but that's possible. Mike Jeffries?
Yeah, he freaked out. He had a seizure.
Really? Yeah, I don't remember that, but it's possible. Yeah, real cool guy. Yeah.
So now you got the air personality. So now you start getting structure.
Doug Banks I brought in.
Doug Banks. Now, how did Doug Banks wind up here in Chicago?
Well, I had worked with him in St. Louis. I hired him there a few years earlier, in 78. And he left St. Louis to go to Vegas, crashed and burned, was sitting up in Detroit at his mom's house and was calling me every 15 minutes begging for a job. And I guess he caught me at a weak moment, and I brought him down and put him in. Well, actually, I hired him twice at BMX. I'm trying to remember now. Was it the first time? The first time I think I brought him in midday or something like that, or afternoons. The second time, I was on the air doing the morning show, and I was ready to get off. I hated getting up at 3, 4 o'clock in the morning and staying in the station all day. So I brought him in as a sidekick, and eventually to evolve him into being the host and wean myself off the air. And we did that, and it became Banks and Company. So he was the lead guy, and I was one of the cast of idiots on with him. And I knew it was working when we would go out and make appearances, and people started calling me Company. I said, okay, they're getting it. Not all the way, but they realize he's Banks and somebody else is Company. It was supposed to be a group of people a part of the company. So anyway, I came off the air, and it was operations manager, program director, and that's when I really got my feet into building that station to the mega station that it became. And we did research to find out what people really liked and disliked.
Was anyone using research at that? How was research used at that time?
In Chicago radio, not to the degree that I took it to. GCI was doing, basic research like finding out what's selling in the stores, and so were we. Everybody was doing that. But nobody was really doing audience testing or focus groups and stuff like that. We did focus groups, we did perceptual studies, we did call-out music research on a weekly basis. So all of our current songs, we tested with our core audience and the people who like GCI and BMX. So the songs that rose to the top, we played more often. The ones that didn't so well, we didn't play that
Now,
much.
did the mix shows... Obviously, I was always under the impression that if a record popped hot out of the mix shows, eventually you would wind up testing that record as well. Correct?
I would test it or put it in rotation, give it more exposure, and then begin to test it.
Songs like Cinnamon come to my mind, thanks to you. What else, Frankie? Denroy Morgan, Dance or Die, Sweet Pea Atkinson.
Yep.
Which were records nobody else in this city. Everybody else was still playing Jenny, 867-5309 with their thumb in their ass.
Exactly.
All over Chicago playing the same records. And here BMX is popping these records that are exploding off the shelves.
And I didn't care whether it was a black artist or a white artist.
Right.
I mean, we played probably 30% of our playlists with non-black artists, maybe at times more. and it didn't matter to me. It was what was happening in the streets.
Mm-hmm.
If it was being played in the clubs, it was selling through, and it tested with the core audience, we didn't care.
Yeah. Not much left to be said after that one.
Yeah, I mean, we played imports, stuff that was you couldn't even buy in some cases.
Yeah.
And I wasn't afraid to go with stuff that felt good.
So now, let me see, 83, 84, moving up. Summer of 85, BMX hits 7 share, which was like, when's the last time you figure anybody hit a 7 share in this market? About 1990, if even that?
Yeah, probably.
BMX hits a 7 share, so Marco Spoon, Veronique, and Doug Banks sitting there top of the spots, basically.
Right.
With their airships. And actually, there's a spot on WBMX.com, the memorabilia section. There's actually a picture of that rating of the from the Sun-Times.
Oh, really?
The feeder column from
feeder column.
Bob Feeder's column, where you can actually see what the number was, and just it's this astronomical. WGCI was what, a 4? Was it, Frankie?
In the 4s,
like a 4 something.
Yeah.
WBMX is like a 7 share, and I don't know if it was you or if it was Armando or if it was somebody called me and told me that that the article was in the paper that morning. I was like, wow, man. I just lit up. I was thrilled. I couldn't believe it.
I'll never forget when those numbers came out. We were doing the Taste of Chicago, and they were giving away the Trans Am. And I remember going up to Lee, going, "Wow, this is phenomenal, dude." And he goes, "Dude, enjoy it because it ain't gonna last." That's on. I go, "What do you mean? Aren't we gonna be up? Aren't we going to a 10 share?" And you're like, "Nope, you don't understand how it works, boys. Enjoy it because it doesn't last."
You know, you just don't know. I mean, we have broken through into new territory, and when you do that, you just don't know that there's no certainty there.
It's
you don't
exhaustive momentum.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you know, we enjoyed it while it lasted, and it wasn't like it was a real flash in the pan. The problem was, right after that happened, my contract was up for renewal, and we fell apart. We were $5,000 apart, okay, on what I wanted and what they were willing to pay. $5,000. So we fell apart, and I quit. I walked out.
What year was that?
That was this is 85.
Yeah, because the summer book, it had to be after the summer book.
Yeah, because I ended up going. It was I went over to GCI Octoberish in 85.
And that's when in the mix shows. Yeah. And what a lot of people don't realize is there's incarnations of the Hot Mix 5.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Kind of like Kiss, just like Kiss. You know, it's a company that had interchangeable parts.
Absolutely.
You know,
Menudo.
Yeah.
That's a good
I always
example.
wanted to be part of Menudo. You too, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So go ahead, take it from the jump to GCI.
Okay, so I jumped to GCI, made more money than I wanted from BMX because the management over there realized what we had done to them. Mm-hmm. And I mean, and straight out, I mean, the GM said, "Look, you know, you whipped my butt, man, and I want to be back on top, and I want to exceed what you did at BMX." I said, "Okay,